Hi, this is Paul Colligan, and in video 3 of 6, we ask the question, when does podcasting make sense to me? Really, this one's very simple. Podcasting only makes sense under two circumstances. Both of them have to do with what you can do through your podcast. If through your podcast you can grow your audience, a podcast makes a lot of sense. If through your podcast you can serve your audience, a podcast makes a lot of sense. If neither one of those options are there for you, honestly, a podcast really doesn't make much sense for you. Let's talk about growing your audience. As we talked in the first video, podcasting enables media to be time-shifted and portable. Was there part of your audience who couldn't get to you previously, either because of time commitments, because of location, because of the consumption vehicle, because of some limitation you had previously on access to the content that you were providing? Was it webcasts where people had to be in front of a computer and understand a specific technology and be there at a certain time? Was it a telephone call that they had to attend at a certain time when they had something else going on? Was it just the hassle of always participating and interacting with you on your time and on your schedule that has parts of your audience away? If an audience who couldn't get to you previously now has access to you through podcasting, you've got a really interesting opportunity to grow your audience. Let's talk about a new audience. Would your audience look for you, or the topic you represent at the very least, in iTunes, maybe other podcast directories? When a person gets a new iPod, gets a new MP3 player, starts looking at the internet for portable content, would they search for something in your demographics, something in your specialties? Would they even think that what you're doing somehow has a podcast related to it? Could press generated by launching a podcast in your topic, in your niche, in your area, would that help? Would suddenly somebody reading a newspaper article about your podcast, because they're interested not in podcasting, but your topic, would that bring them over to your website and hopefully into subscribing to your podcast? If you can use a podcast to grow your audience, that's a really good time to launch a podcast. Using your podcast to serve your audience. As mentioned earlier, and we talked about in the first video, podcasting enables you to be time-shifted and portable. This lets your audience take you in on their own schedule. Imagine having somebody that you had to deal with and didn't mind dealing with come to you and say, hey, I know you have to deal with me. That's enough. Why don't you pick when we work together? Why don't you pick how we communicate? Why don't you be in charge? That's a phenomenal thing to give to a customer. What about moving you from uptime to downtime? Did you participate with your audience? Did they have to be on the phone at a certain time? Did they have to be, in front of a computer at a certain time? Did they have to take part out of an important time to them to participate with you? Now, if you serve your content via podcast, because again, it's time shifted, could they take that content and consume it at downtime? When they're driving to work, when they're working out at the club, when they're on an airplane, when they're at work doing something else they maybe should be doing? Can they take downtime and put you in downtime because you are now time shifted and portable? Basically, if you serve them through podcasting, if you let them come to you on their own schedule, let you move you into downtime, they're going to have a smile on their face in relationship with you. And you know what? If your competition doesn't serve them accordingly, you're going to have a unique opportunity that your competition doesn't have, and your audience is going to respond accordingly. Pure facts. Some customers need a touch that podcasting can't provide. Just like web design and a website isn't perfect and isn't the golden egg for every single company out there, podcasting's the same way. If you can't do what you do through time-shifted portable media in any way, shape, or form, then podcasting isn't for you, because they need more than that. Of course, if you can supplement or support or add on to what you have through time-shifted portable media, maybe that goes back to the serving your customer. But honestly, pure fact, some customers need a touch that podcasting can't provide. Pure fact number 2, not every demographic is listening to podcasts. It's a techie, maybe isn't the right term, but it's a high touch. It's a high-tech form of media consumption. It's a lot harder still to take a podcast, remember to listen to it, than it is necessarily to turn on the television set or plop a DVD in the DVD player on your television set. Not every demographic is listening to podcasts. And if your demographic isn't, well, we got an issue. And finally, pure fact, there's a learning curve. If your audience doesn't want to learn how to consume via podcast, doesn't matter how good your podcast is. So, 4 things to consider. Number 1, and this may be a blow to some, but does your audience want to hear from you on a regular basis? There are people that I've seen attempt to enter the podcasting space who have a relationship with their audience where they touch them once, twice a year, and suddenly they think that their audience wants to hear from them on a weekly basis because they have a podcast. Does your audience want to hear from you on a regular basis? If they don't, podcasting really doesn't make sense. Is your audience plugged in? If your audience won't consume a podcast, if they're not going to take in this stuff, if they aren't going to listen or watch, then obviously podcasting isn't for you. Could podcasting bring you a new audience? Or could podcasting help you serve your existing audience better? The 2 things we talked about earlier. If it can't help bring you a new audience, and it can't help you serve your existing audience better, well, then why are you doing it? Next video, we're going to take a look at the simple question, where does one get podcast information? If I'm going to do a podcast, where does somebody find out about me? In that video, we'll actually jump over to some live websites, and I'll give you some clear examples so you can just see exactly how it all works. So between now and then, consider these questions, and I'll see you at the next video. Bye.